What is up, everybody, and welcome to a brand new tier list ranking video talking all about horror directors. And this is also my latest Patreon pick video. So this is going to be a collection of some of the biggest names in horror. I think I've got like 43, 44 different directors here. So pretty big list of names, though some of them we're going to move through fairly quickly as to not make this the longest video in the world. Although I feel like I say that often and still ends up making a pretty long fucking video, but you know, we're going to try. We're going to try. I'm long-winded. What can I say? But this is a topic that was picked by my Patreon members. If you don't know what Patreon is, that is my crowdfunding source. This is the collection of people that enjoy my channel on a level where they want to contribute to it. They want to add to what I'm able to do. And they're the reason why I'm able to go off and do things like a New Orleans trip and cover the Overlook Film Festival and things like that. So they're absolutely the lifeblood of this channel. And there is a whole bunch of different tiers. There's different dollar amounts, obviously, for different levels of tiers. I give away Blu-ray digital copy codes. I give them early access to videos that I finish up early. I give them exclusive vlog videos. And they also have this thing called the Patreon pick, where every single month I let them throw out a bunch of different video ideas. I pick my collection of favorites and then let them vote. And the winner becomes a video. And that is how the idea for today's awesome video came about, is my awesome patrons on Patreon. So if you're curious on checking that out, the link is going to be in the video description, and I appreciate your consideration for that. The link to this specific tier list is also going to be in the video description as well. So if you enjoy this, you want to do your own, go ahead and do it. Tag me on social media, on Instagram or Twitter or wherever, and let me see where you have arranged these directors. But a few list of rules, the criteria for which I chose these names, because if we wanted to talk about every single director that has contributed something to horror, we'd be here all fucking day. There was just a couple of simple rules. Number one is that I have to have some experience with the filmography of the director. So there's a number of names on this list, like Dario Argento probably being one of the main ones they're going to be called out. I just honestly have not seen enough of his films to be able to put him on this list. I've only seen Suspiria and I believe Tenebrae. There's a number of other foreign film directors that unfortunately I just not have gotten much experience with them yet that I had to leave off. The other criteria was that they have to be a name that when I hear them, I think horror. I think their horror filmography. There's a number of directors that have delivered some of the best horror films of all time that have literally just made like one horror film. Think like Stanley Kubrick with The Shining, or John Landis with American Werewolf in London. And so if I included them on this list, it would be a little difficult for me, based off of the categories that I've chosen and the criteria that I've chosen, on how to stack them against other filmmakers when I'm basically just judging them off of one film. So there's a number of favorites that you guys are going to be disappointed on this list. I apologize, but there's a ton of names here, so hopefully we could still have a lot of fun with who I did decide to bring in. And the last thing that I have to address here, which is unfortunate, and it was kind of shocking and eye-opening, to be completely honest with you, is that of this entire list, there's only 2 female directors that I have on this list of directors to talk about. And that's because based off the criteria that I chose, those are the only 2 that fit the criteria. Unfortunately, a lot of some of the best horror films of all time have been made by female directors, but most of the cases that I found, the vast majority of them, they'd only made like 1, tops 2 horror films and then completely went on to do other things. Like Catherine Bigelow, Near Dark's one of my favorites of all time, but she has not made a horror film since. You had a number of other ones, like the director of Jennifer's Body and the Babadook. The Babadook has only made the 1, and then she made The Nightingale. She only made 2 films. If you guys are super disappointed in that, I apologize, but let me know down in the comment section below. Maybe I can make up for it by doing like a top 10 horror films directed by female directors or something like that. I think that'd be a fun video. So I wish that wasn't the case, but unfortunately it is. Now, as far as the categories that I have chosen here, I wanted to do something a little bit different with this list. I didn't want this to be like me ranking these directors best to worst or anything like that. It's a little more standard. I wanted to talk a little bit more about just what these directors have done, what they've contributed that mean the most to me. Like, how have they impacted my horror taste? How have they impacted my list of favorite films of all time? So going from the lowest category to the top, we have Not For Me, which there are going to be a few directors on here that unfortunately they have fan bases, they have notoriety in the horror space for a reason. People love what they do, but for whatever reason, the films that they have released so far just have not resonated with me, just don't appeal to my personal taste. Then you have I Want to Love You, which are directors that have a certain style or are attached to a certain property, or there's something about them that I desperately want to be a fan of theirs, but for whatever reason, the majority of what they come out with just doesn't quite work for me for a myriad of reasons, and we'll get into all the individual ones when we come to them. You have My Curiosity, which are directors that have done enough good where their name sticks in my brain, where I'm curious to see what they do next. And if they're attached to a film, it certainly will pique my interest a little bit. You have My Attention, which are directors that have done way more good than movies that have not really worked for me. And so I'm pretty safe in betting that whatever they come out with next is going to be something I enjoy. And I'm usually their opening night. Then we have a very interesting category that I added last minute called Dark Horse. And these are going to be a list of directors that have contributed either a film or a couple of films that mean so much to me that they're kind of like the unsung heroes of horror in my mind. So you're going to have directors here that are, for whatever unfortunate reason, don't get brought up very often when we discuss the best or the most influential horror directors, but they absolutely are on that list for me personally. And then we have the top, which is horror heroes, not needing a whole lot of explanation here. These are the GOATs. These are the ones that have given me some of my favorite films of all time, or the ones that just have absolutely the best filmography or the best quality as far as consistency in their work. Those are the top dogs. So those are the 6 categories we're going to be ranking them off of, so it should be a really interesting tier list by the end of it. And now we're kicking this thing off, and Tier Maker has all of these directors listed alphabetically by their last name. So we're going to kick this off with Alexander. And he is somebody that absolutely has my attention. This is the guy that directed High Tension, the Hills Have Eyes remake, the Piranha remake, the 3D one, not 3DD, 3D. Also, he did Crawl. Probably a couple other Mirrors, maybe a few others that I'm forgetting, but he's a director that when I think of his name, I just think of visceral gore, painful deaths, intensity. And that's what always draws me to his movies. You think of The Hills Have Eyes or High Tension, these just really extreme, gory, painful deaths. You think of Mirrors and that bathroom kill with the jaw being torn open just sticks in my mind, even though that's not the best movie in the world. It is forever in my brain because of that kill. Crawl was really cool and intense. So he is somebody that when his name gets attached to it, he hasn't necessarily done a movie that I have loved, but I am always so much more interested, and I'm there night one when I see his name on the poster. Now we have Fede Alvarez, and let me tell you, if I was ranking these off of quality and there was a category between You Have My Attention and Horror Heroes, he would fit that absolutely. For now, I'm going to put him in You Have My Attention, but he is like at the top of that category. This is a guy that has unfortunately only done a few films at this point. And his newest film I haven't seen yet. If we did this in a couple of months after I see Alien Romulus, he might get bumped all the way up to Horror Heroes. But what a splash this guy has made in just a short amount of time. He gave us the Evil Dead remake or reboot or sequel, whatever the fuck you want to call it, that I absolutely love. It's my favorite film in that franchise and one of my favorite horror films of all time. You have Don't Breathe, which I'm a massive fan of. I didn't care for his Girl with the Dragon Tattoo movie, but I don't blame him. That was just a weird decision from the studio. Like, we're not going to continue the original run of movies, but we're also not going to continue the David Fincher film. We're just going to do a random chapter that's detached from all the others. That was just weird from Jump Street. But you got Alien Romulus coming out. The trailer is one of the best trailers I've seen in years. I'm so pumped for it. If the movie is even half as good as the trailer was, then this is the best Alien film that we have gotten since the first two in my mind. So I'm so excited for it. I think he's absolutely the perfect guy to do it. And as I said, I mean, if Alien Romulus is on the level of Evil Dead and Don't Breathe, I think he's going to go up to Horror Heroes for me. I just love this guy's style. Now we have Ari Aster, and whoo, here we go. We're going to start the controversy. It's not for me, guys. I'm sorry. I know. Like, look, I think that Hereditary is a genuinely fantastic horror film. I was a little iffy on it in certain ways when I first saw it. The more that I watch it, the more that I appreciate it, the more that I enjoy it, the more that I respect it. However, after Hereditary, he was a guy that absolutely had my attention. Anything that he was going to do, I was going to be there. He was a name I'm going to listen out for. Did not like Midsummer whatsoever. To be fair, I have not given it a watch since theaters, so maybe if I watched it today, I'd like it a little bit more, but I didn't like that movie at all, and I hated Beau Was Afraid. I mean, maybe hate's a strong word. I strongly disliked Beau Was Afraid. It is just so not my thing. While I can appreciate some of the artistry on display, and absolutely he's a genius for better or worse with his filmmaking, that movie just turned me off so much to where he's a name now after the last two films where when he's attached to something, my automatic assumption is that I am not going to like that movie until he brings something out that changes my mind. So it's unfortunate. I know he's a big favorite right now. He's a massive name, and there's going to be a lot of people who are pissy that he is that low on the list, but I got to be honest. I loved Hereditary. I wish he would do something that is on that level. But the last two films, and especially his most recent film, have just turned me off so much that I just don't have any interest in what is coming from Ari Aster for a while. Now we have Clive Barker, and this is one that's a little bit difficult for me to place because I feel conflicted about it, but I think I have to put him in I Want to Love You. He is a very distinct filmmaker. He is very much somebody where his work sticks in my mind for being so grotesque and so horrific and so depraved with just the ideas of what is going on. But there hasn't been a single film that he has made that I have really liked. Even the original Hellraiser. I mean, what, you got Hellraiser, you got Lord of Illusions, you got Nightbreed, a couple of others. None of them I would say that I love. Even the original Hellraiser, where I like that movie quite a bit. I do think it's the best in that franchise. I just don't think the franchise is all that good, so it's not a very high bar. But there's always something that doesn't quite get there for me with the work that I have seen from him. So I don't know if he is still making movies. I think Midnight Meat Train was the most recent thing that I've seen from him, which was pretty solid. Wow. Midnight Meat Train is pretty solid. Yeah, we're getting demonetized. Anyway, Clive Barker, I really want to love you. I really do. I don't know if he's making any movies in the future, so I don't know if there's a chance he's going to come out with something that just really suddenly just makes up for some things that he's done in the past that haven't really worked for me. If he really is going to solidify being somebody that goes higher on this list or not, but as of right now, that's where he's going to go. Now we have Tim Burton, and oh God, here we go. I'm just asking for an ass kicking in the comments section. He's also a director who's just not really for me. You know, he's made what, like 30 something movies at this point. I think there's 4 that I genuinely like. I really like Pee-wee. That's my favorite movie that he's ever done. Just, you know, a lot of childhood nostalgia with that one, but it still holds up. I really enjoy Pee-wee's Big Adventure. I really like Beetlejuice. I like Edward Scissorhands, though I don't love it on the level that a lot of other people do. And I like Sleepy Hollow. That is it. That is it. I think that he has a very distinct style. You know, maybe one of the most distinct styles in movie history. Like, you see a movie, you just know it's a Tim Burton film, and that's very cool. There's certain elements to his style that I like. There's some bit of quirkiness and oddness and off-kilterness that I really like, but usually it goes too far. Usually it's just too weird. Usually it's not all that great in the story department for me. Usually it's more style than substance. So I'm not going to act like I've seen every film that the guy has made, because I certainly haven't, but I've seen the majority of them, and the majority of the ones that I have seen just aren't my thing. Now we have John Carpenter. We're not even going to waste any time. He is the first head on the Mount Rushmore of horror heroes. John Carpenter is my personal favorite director, and I'm not saying that everything that he has done has been a knockout. There's been a number of films that he has done that don't really work for me. I've reviewed a number of them here very recently. But that guy had a legendary run in like the late 70s all the way through to the early 90s. I mean, you think of really cool cult classics like Assault on Precinct 13 or The Fog or Escape from New York or They Live. And then you get into these all-timers like Halloween, like The Thing, my personal favorite horror film of all time. Christine, I think, belongs on that list. In the Mouth of Madness, I think, belongs on that list. I love John Carpenter's Vampires. In my opinion, that was his last greatest film. Most people would say In the Mouth of Madness. So I'm not going to pretend like he has a spotless filmography, because he doesn't. But when he was on, that motherfucker was on like Donkey Kong, okay? John Carpenter is probably one of the most influential directors, and I would say is the most influential horror director for most people on this list, especially the younger ones. And most of my favorite horror films of all time, if I'm going to categorize them by which director contributed to it most, it's that man right there. So I love John Carpenter. I think it's a shame that he doesn't make movies anymore, but I understand why he doesn't. But nonetheless, fucking love what he does. Most of my favorites come from him, and so he's absolutely a horror hero for me. Now we have Don Coscarelli, and this is our first entry in the wacky and inevitably weird dark horse category. So I know Don Coscarelli as the father of Phantasm, and that's where most people probably recognize him from. He directed the first 4 Phantasm films. Unfortunately, he did not direct the 5th one, otherwise it probably would have been significantly better. But Phantasm 1 and 2 specifically are in my favorites of all time. Those are 2 of the most important films of all time for me and shaping my horror taste, movies that I watched constantly as a kid, movies that I still love as an adult. And he's gone on to do other things. He did like the Beastmaster movies and a few others. He was going to direct Silver Bullet. Very interesting story there. But his legacy is going to be Phantasm. And that's a very love or hate franchise, so I understand some people would probably have him towards or at the bottom because they just don't like what Phantasm is. I absolutely do. And for me, he's one of those directors that, especially since I am a fan of Phantasm, I think he's contributed a lot to horror. And I just rarely see his name get brought up, certainly not in a good light, and that always frustrates and disappoints me. So for me, he's one of my dark horses. Now we have Wes Craven. And let me be vulnerable and honest for a moment here. This is not an easy pick. It's not an easy pick that you would assume that it would be. Because while Wes Craven deserves all the credit in the world for his 2 biggest contributions to horror pop culture, Nightmare on Elm Street, as well as Scream, 2 of the most iconic, celebrated, and fandom-fueled horror franchises of all time. I think his overall filmography is actually not all that great. I reviewed all of his films and ranked them a few years ago, and while you certainly have some standouts, like some very influential early, like dirty films like Last House on the Left and The Hills Have Eyes, very influential movies, very standout movies of the 70s, not particularly favorites of mine. You have things that are like little cult hits like Vampire in Brooklyn, or even more so People Under the Stairs, which both of those, again, movies that aren't really high on my list. People Under the Stairs I've tried desperately to be a fan of and just never quite works for me. You get some cooler, smaller movies like Red Eye, Deadly Friend, which by every respectable criteria is a terrible movie, but I absolutely love it. It's like a so bad that it's amazing experience for me. So all throughout his filmography, movies that don't star Freddy or Ghostface, there's more misses than hits. I'm just honestly, I think there's more misses than hits. But I wouldn't be able to sleep at night if I didn't stick him in Horror Heroes right next to John Carpenter. Just for Freddy Krueger, if nothing else. I mean, Freddy Krueger and Chucky, Nightmare on Elm Street and Child's Play, those are the 2 biggest building blocks that created my taste in horror. Those were the 2 that got me into horror, that turned me into a fanatic, that is absolutely the reason why I'm talking to you today and do this every single day as a career. I owe all of that to at least part of it to Wes Craven. I think that both of his Nightmare on Elm Street films are fantastic. I think all 4 of his Scream films are really good. Even the 3rd one is solid. And like I said, I like some of his other movies, but those are the 2 things that he's known for. But he doesn't quite have the filmography that I think somebody like John Carpenter has. That's just my own personal opinion. I know some people out there would disagree. I was very excited to check out a lot of his films for the first time when I did my review series, and a lot of them disappointed me quite a bit. But nonetheless, Wes Craven is horror royalty for a reason. Spotty filmography be damned. He gave us Freddy Krueger. He gave us Ghostface. And there are not many directors out there that have contributed that much to pop culture. Now we're moving on to David Cronenberg, the body horror guy. And this is going to be our first one in You Have My Curiosity. And part of that is because admittedly there's a number of his films that I still have not seen yet from the 80s, which is kind of like his heyday. I love The Fly. The Fly is my favorite movie by him. I thought that Scanners was pretty solid. I've seen a couple others. There's some more recent movies by his that are really interesting. Actually, if I was to give you my second favorite beyond The Fly, it would be A History of Violence, which is very not horror, although there's still some body horror in there with some of the gore. But yeah, Cronenberg's very interesting. Very interesting. And so by definition, he kind of embodies the "you have my curiosity." I don't know if it's going to be really fucking weird and not my thing, like Crimes for the Future or whatever that more recent film was, or if it's going to be this awesome mainstay of 80s body horror like The Fly. You never really know with Cronenberg, but you know it's going to be fucking strange, interesting, and you're going to remember it. So he's one that I need to do probably a review series on his films after I'm done with John Carpenter. I think that would be an interesting thing to go through. Now we have Joe Dante, and he is another one that unfortunately I have to stick an "I Want to Love You," because there's something about Joe Dante's films that I always expect to like them more than I actually do. Gremlins is my favorite film of his. I do genuinely love Gremlins. That is a holiday classic in my mind. But you have things like The Howling, which most people would say behind American Werewolf in London is the best werewolf movie of all time. Some people would say it is the best werewolf movie of all time. And I was not really all that enamored with it the 3 times that I've seen it now. I think the practical effects are awesome, but there's always something missing for me. And then you have things like The Burbs that everybody seems to love that I watched and I just couldn't get into it. And a number of other movies. Gremlins 2. I really don't like that movie. So Joe Dante has a certain style to him that I think is really interesting. And I wish that I liked his movies more than I did, but I would be lying if I didn't say that besides Gremlins, I always walk away saying, like, well, I should have loved that, but why didn't I? And I'm always kind of puzzled about what exactly didn't work for me, but it just didn't. Now we have Guillermo del Toro, and this is another one that admittedly I have a little bit of a lack of experience with his films. Like, I still have not seen Shape of Water. Don't shoot me. I still have not seen Pan's Labyrinth, which most people say is his best film ever. I don't have an excuse for you. I just suck, I guess. But Guillermo del Toro is also going to go in "You Have My Curiosity" because I really like his style. He has this very grotesque style about him, whether he's doing horror or action or, Hellboy or Shape of Water or Nightmare Alley or whatever it is. My favorite film of his is Blade 2. I absolutely love Blade 2. I think that Mimic is pretty solid, especially when you get the one that he was able to put scenes back into it, his director's cut, if you will. So he's somebody, when his name is attached to it, I'm very interested. Even Pacific Rim. I am on record numerous times that I do not like kaiju movies. I have a solid time with Pacific Rim. So I like his stuff. I need to watch more of it, especially Pan's Labyrinth. I know. It's only so much time in the day. But yeah, he's somebody that always has my curiosity. He's a very interesting filmmaker. Now we have Brian De Palma. And Brian De Palma was an interesting one. He was one that I toyed with whether or not he fit my criteria or not, and I wanted to include him because I think that he's more well-known, even by me, he's more well-known for his crime thrillers with like Scarface and Carlito's Way, things like that. But when I think of Brian De Palma, I do think horror. Even if you're talking about Scarface and Carlito's Way, you got like the chainsaw scene in Scarface. You got some very tense sequences and some very bloody stuff happening in Carlito's Way. And then you have films like that are more distinctly horror, like Carrie, probably his most well-known film. You got Dressed to Kill, which we can argue if that's horror or thriller, but pretty horrific scene in the elevator and some horrific images in that one. You got a number of others. Black Dahlia, I remember a somewhat recent one that he did. So his style is very distinctly horror to me. Even if he's doing a different subgenre, there's something about it that just has that edge to it that says horror to me. So I threw him on this list, and I'm going to stick him in You Have My Attention. He doesn't really make too many films nowadays. His big run was there in the 80s and the 90s. But yeah, there's a number of my favorite films, namely Scarface and Carlito's Way and The Untouchables, that he has given us. They're not horror, but I really do like his style. I think there's something really interesting about it. And he's very influential for a lot of people on this list. Like Don Mancini specifically, I know, massive Brian De Palma fan. So he's contributed a lot to horror. Now we have Scott Derrickson. And I'm going to stick him in You Have My Curiosity because I got to be honest, his filmography is not that strong for me. He's got a number of films that I really like Black Phone, I think is my favorite film by him. I really like Sinister, even though the trailer fucked my experience with that because it just gives away the whole movie. Thanks so much, modern movie marketing. But there's a number of films that he's made that I don't care for. I don't really like his Hellraiser film. I don't like Deliver Us from Evil. I still have not seen Exorcism of Emily Rose. I hear a lot of good thing about that one, so maybe that's something that I need to check out soon too. But Scott Derrickson, yeah, he is somebody that here recently has done some very interesting things to where if his name is on a movie, I'm a little more interested in it for sure. I'm not at the point where I'm super confident that it's going to be for me, but I am curious to check it out. So that's where he's going to go. Now we have Robert Eggers, another very new addition to kind of the big names that's going on here. And I'm also going to stick him in You Have My Curiosity because The Witch is a movie that very much I respect a lot more than I enjoy. I think there's some really horrific things going on in that, and I like the style of it, but it's not a movie I would ever really care to rewatch, I don't think. Absolutely did not like The Lighthouse. The Lighthouse just does not work for me whatsoever. I loved The Northman. The Northman's my favorite film by him, and I am so excited for his Nosferatu film. Unfortunately, we got to wait till December to see it, but I have all the confidence in the world that movie's going to be fucking incredible. So I really like his style. I like how he is very dead set on doing period piece films, and if he sticks with things like The Witch and Nosferatu, I think he's going to be a really interesting voice throughout the next decade or more of horror. So he's somebody that I'm very curious to check out what he has done. But I got to see at least one or two more films of his that really work for me before I can stick him up a little higher. Now we have Mike Flanagan. And, you know, I think I have to put him in Horror Heroes. I think I have to because this guy is just so consistently great that I don't think he's ever missed. Like there's a number of things that he has done that I would just say that I like, but maybe I haven't necessarily loved yet, like Oculus and Hush, Gerald's Game. Like he's very consistent at least getting me close to like a 4-star experience. But then he has some things like Dr. Sleep, which I think is genuinely one of the greatest horror films that's been made like in the last decade. A number of his shows for Netflix, more specifically The Fall of House of Usher, which just happened, I thought was fucking fantastic all the way through. Still haven't seen Midnight Mass. Everybody tells me I would love that the most. And, you know, see my answer to Guillermo del Toro. I just feel like there's not enough hours in the day, but I'll get to it. But Mike Flanagan is one of those names that he has just built such a reputation for consistently giving great movies and TV series that when his name is on it, I know I'm going to like it. There's a chance that I'll love it, but I know I'm at least going to like it. And hearing interviews by him and just his approach to horror, he has such a classiness to him that I really love and respect. And so like people have asked me a number of times, like, who do you want to take over a Nightmare on Elm Street? I either want to see a visceral version of Nightmare on Elm Street from somebody like Fede Alvarez, or if we're going to take like a classy, psychological, get inside of your head type approach, then Mike Flanagan is absolutely the guy that I would want to see his take on it. So unfortunately, I did not get a chance to meet or interview him at the Overlook Film Festival. His movie Oculus was doing like a 10-year anniversary, and he was there for it. His wife was there too. And I just chose to see another movie, to see something I haven't seen before versus go across town to see a film I already had. But Mike Flanagan is absolutely one of the top working directors today. And as I said, as far as consistent quality, anybody who is rose to prominence within the last 10 years, I think that he's the top of the list as far as that criteria goes. So he's a horror hero for me, and I can't wait to see what he does next. Now we have Alex Garland, and this is another one that was interesting, and I wasn't sure if I was going to include him or not, because all 4 of his films, while being very horrific in style and with certain elements, they're more horror adjacent. But I think that he has such a disturbing nature to some of the things that he explores that that's what sticks out to me about his film. So I wanted to include him. And he's going to also go in You Have My Curiosity. Now, apparently he's done making films. I guess he said after Civil War, that's his last film, which is very odd since he's only made, I think, 4. But whatever. If that's his legacy, that's his legacy. We'll see, I guess. But he did Ex Machina, which I love. He did Annihilation, which I liked a lot. Didn't care for the ending. Men, which I distinctly did not like, but that's probably his most horror movie. And then just 2 weeks ago, he dropped Civil War. And all 4 of those movies have very distinct horror flavors to them. Ex Machina towards the third act and the implications of what it's talking about, very horrific. Annihilation has that bear sequence that everybody was talking about, one of the scariest scenes of that year. And then Civil War, it's very a realistic take, like an alternate future, at least I hope it's an alternate future, but some very horrifying imagery, some very tense scenes. So we can argue whether or not he belongs on this list or not, and I don't necessarily disagree with you if you think that he doesn't, but there's just something about his style that he felt like he belonged on this list, and that's where he's going to go. Now we have Adam Green, and unfortunately he's another addition to Not For Me. And it's just because it's not necessarily his style. Like, there's something about what he does that should work for me, where he's bordering on I Want to Love You, but every film that he has released so far, I haven't really cared much for. He's done the 4 Hatchet films, and he's done Frozen. I might be missing one, but those are the 5 that I know him for. I've grown to like the first Hatchet. I can have fun with it if it's on. I never am in the mood to watch it. It's a very over-the-top, super cheesy, campy slasher film, and that one I get some entertainment value out of. The other 3, almost none whatsoever. I just do not like those 3 movies. And Frozen, I would probably say, is his best film, but it's one of those one and done experiences for me. I think that it's an interesting concept. People, skiers stuck in the ski lift, and then there's wolves underneath them, and they're either going to stay up there and die or try to find a way to escape. Like, it's a really interesting little bottle movie, but I've never had the desire to rewatch it. Like, it was effective for a one-time watch. I wasn't like in love with it, but just like it was a one and done thing. So Adam Green is one of those names where, just like the others, if he's attached to something, I assume it's probably not going to be for me until he changes my mind. But we'll see. He has the potential to come out of that very easily with one movie, because his style should work for me. It's just something about his very goofy, campy, cheesy, humorous style that is just, it's not on my wavelength of humor. Now we have Alfred Hitchcock, and don't get your panties in a bunch about this one. Hear me out. He's going in You Have My Curiosity. Again, we are not ranking these directors based off of like who's the best and who's the worst. These are just for my own personal tastes. And Alfred Hitchcock, admittedly, I have not seen a number of his films. I've seen about half of them. I've seen the ones that are probably the most prominent ones, but his films are also the oldest of anybody on this list. They're all black and white for the most part. So there is something about them that inevitably land in that respect more than I enjoy category. Of course, Psycho is an all-time classic, but I'd be lying if I said that I watched it all that often. You have things like The Birds that I think is very interesting, but again, I never have the desire to rewatch it. Rear Window, things like that. So there's no denying the man's contribution to horror, but he's somebody that if somebody wanted to throw on a Hitchcock film that I'd never seen before, I'd be curious to check it out, but I wouldn't necessarily have the most confidence whether it would be my thing by the end of it or not. So that's as plain and as honest as I can put it. Now we have Tom Holland, not Spider-Man. For some reason, he gets mixed up with Spider-Man on Twitter all the time. We're talking about the director of Fright Night and Child's Play, and he was the writer of Psycho 2. And he is my next entry in Dark Horse. This guy, if there was any unsung hero of horror on this list, it is that man right there. And I don't know why he hasn't made more films, because Child's Play, obviously, the first one, super influential movie for me, super important movie for me. Fright Night, even more so. That's my favorite film that he has done. It is my second favorite vampire film of all time, and it's very close with my number one. I love Fright Night so much. And even though he didn't direct Psycho 2, speaking of Alfred Hitchcock, we just got done talking about him. Psycho 2, I think, is one of the greatest slasher sequels of all time. It is my favorite Psycho film. I think it's one of the best horror sequels, period, of all time. Very, very underrated and underappreciated. So he's one of those guys that he hasn't had like this big, sprawling filmography, but his impact was, while small, very impactful, very distinct, very much a mainstay, where a lot of people, when you name off the things that he has done, they're like, holy shit, that was all one guy? Yeah, he's fucking awesome. Why doesn't people talk about him more? I don't know. but that's why he's going in Dark Horse. Every time we talk about great horror filmmakers, I never see this man's name unless I throw it in there, and it's a damn shame. So Tom Holland's my dark horse. Now we have Tobe Hooper, and he's another one that might give me a little flack, but he's going into You Have My Curiosity. So he gave us the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, very different film, and Poltergeist. Those are the main three. He's done a number of others like The Fun House, and he's done a ton of horror films, but those are the three that he's mainly known for. Poltergeist being the one of those three that I think is the best. I absolutely love that movie. The original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, for the longest time, I said I respected more than I enjoyed it. It really just depends on my mood. There's times where I really crave the experience that movie gives, and there's no other movie that gives it like the original TCM, and it delivers on that. But I'm always one of those people that, like, I don't know if enjoy is the right word for Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like, that's just a type of film that it gives a very distinct experience, and when I have it, I don't need it again for like 4 years. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is kind of the same way. There's times where I enjoy that more than the original, and there's times where it grates on my nerves. It's weird. So I really like his three more distinct films. I've seen a couple of the others. Funhouse was okay. Didn't do a whole lot for me, but he's one of those guys that while he is a legendary name for a lot of people, I always kind of have a little bit of pause before I want to throw him on my Mount Rushmore because his movies have not impacted me the way that they've impacted some others. But his contribution, can't argue that. Now we have moved on to, unfortunately, our only two female directors on here, and we have Leigh Janiak. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. I might have fucked it up, so I apologize if I did. But she's pretty recent. She did the Fear Street trilogy that came out on Netflix, I think, 2 years ago. I don't know if she's attached to do more of those or not, but that's what she's known for right now. And I thought all three of those were solid. I thought all the three of them were pretty interesting. And I like the fact that they're three fairly distinct movies. You have one of them that is like a modern, 90s slasher. You have one of them that is an 80s slasher, and you have one of them that is a period piece film. And so I thought all three of them were entertaining, all three of them were solid. I'm going to stick her in You Have My Curiosity. I hope she gets to do more. I don't know if it's going to be Fear Street or not, but she did enough in those three films to show her versatility that I hope she gets more work. And now we have Mary Lambert, which even before I get to her, by the way, some people are immediately probably going to call out the Soska sisters. They're pretty well known. I honestly just have not seen any of their films. I watched the first Now You See Me. I never moved on to the sequel. So that's why they're not in here. They would be an obvious pick because they've done all horror films, but that's on me. I just haven't seen any of their films. I need to rectify that. But Mary Lambert is our other one on here, and she is known most for the two Pet Sematary films. She also did Halloween Town 2, Calabar's Revenge. She did an urban legends film, was it Bloody Mary, which I never saw. So she's done a number of them, and it kills me. I got to throw her in I Want to Love You because she gave me Pet Sematary, and Pet Sematary is one of my favorite horror films of all time, and it is often my answer for most scary horror film of all time, just the subject matter of it. But I really don't like Pet Sematary 2. Really don't like Pet Sematary 2. And while this is an ignorant statement, absolutely, I don't have a lot of confidence that I would like urban legend Bloody Mary, distinctly because I have not heard a single person tell me that movie is any good. And Halloween Town 2, I mean, I guess that's Disney horror. We can still call it relevant here. Not nearly as good as the first one. So I don't know, it's on her. It's more of a story issue, but regardless, she gave one awesome horror film, one all-timer. I just haven't enjoyed anything I've seen from her since. So I wish I could stick her higher desperately because I love the first film that she did, that Pet Sematary film, but I just got to be honest, I haven't liked anything she's done since. So, damn. Now we have Christopher Landon, and he's the guy who has very much become prominent as far as like this 80s film plus slasher subgenre, where you have like Groundhog Day plus slasher in Happy Death Day and Happy Death Day to You. You have Freaky, which is Freaky Friday plus slasher. And then he was about to do Scream 7 and all the drama that came out of that. He decided not to. He is somebody that absolutely has my attention. Now, I have not loved anything that he has come out with yet. I really enjoy Happy Death Day and Happy Death Day to You. I really enjoyed Freaky. And I like that style of movie. I just like that little recent subgenre bump that we've had here with things like Totally Killer and in his films. But I just like his mix of horror and comedy. I think he's got a good mix there. And I think he would have been a really good fit for Scream. It's unfortunate we won't see what he does. But yeah, I've enjoyed quite a bit what he's done so far. Very curious to see what he does in the future. And I have a lot of confidence that I'm sure if eventually he'll have a film that I'll really, really like. Now we have Damien Leone, and this is the Terrifier guy, if you guys don't recognize him. And I think of all the filmmakers on this list, he is the one that has the most to prove. So I'm sticking him in You Have My Curiosity. Damien has done a couple of films before Terrifier, most notably All Hallows Eve, which is kind of like a prototype of Terrifier. It was an anthology film where one of the three stories was Art the Clown. It wasn't the current version of Art the Clown, but it was an early version of it. Then he rose to prominence with the first Terrifier, and then Terrifier 2 came out 2 years ago and just exploded. So now we have Terrifier 3 coming out this year, and I really don't know if he's attached to do anything else in the future. But the main thing with Damien, I'm not really a big fan of All Hallows Eve. I have to admit, I didn't care for it too much. Terrifier, I'm very much in the middle with, the first one. There's things about it that I love. There's things about it that I really don't care for. So it's a movie that I'm very middle of the road on. But I really liked Terrifier 2, and I really enjoyed what he did with that one. And it got me really excited for the future of Terrifier. I think that a lot of people are. I think that whether or not there's a lot of people that don't like Terrifier distinctly, which there are, Terrifier 3, I think, is probably going to be the biggest horror release of this year, inevitably. And I'm very excited to see what he does with it. The big question with Damien that a lot of people have, myself included, is can he do something other than Terrifier? And I have all the confidence in the world that he can. I don't know when we're going to see that. I don't know if he's going to stick to Terrifier until he's done with it. I don't know if he's going to take a break and go do other things. But there are some people online that I've interacted with that are admittedly not a fan of Terrifier, so I think that's why it kind of colors their response to him, that think that he's a one-trick pony, that think that he can only do Terrifier-type movies, that he has only ever done these over-the-top, just gore fests. And while there's a certain amount of that I guess is fair, if he's only done that so far, then that's all you have to judge him by. I don't think it's fair to think that he can only do that one thing. Until he tries and fails or just does nothing but Terrifier movies for the next 20 years, I don't think that's a fair thing to say. So I'm very curious to see what comes from Damien now that he has gotten the massive success with Terrifier, and I'm very excited to see what comes from that, even if it's just Terrifier films, but I do hope that he does some other things. And now we have Joe Lynch, another one of the newer names up here, and he is somebody that also has my curiosity. This is the guy that brought us Mayhem a couple of years ago with Samara Weaving. Then he brought a Suitable Flesh last year, which I saw at Fantastic Fest. That was pretty wild. He's got a really crazy style to him, which very much interests me. I haven't necessarily loved anything that he has done so far. There's always something that doesn't quite work for me in the movies that I've seen from him, but I have confidence that he could do something pretty crazy that I would really like. But, you know, just Mayhem in general was something that sold me on him. Somebody that's just that wild and crazy and just tries to have fun with his movies. I'm here for that. So even if I don't enjoy it on the level of maybe some other people, I still like the fact that I had the experience with your film. So that's where he's going to go for now. Oh man, now we have Don Mancini. And this one, I probably have the most complicated relationship with Don Mancini and his work than anybody on this list. And he basically defines the category of I want to love you, as far as my personal taste. So Don Mancini is the guy that gave us Chucky. This was his brainchild. He wrote every single film in the franchise, and he took over directing duties and basically complete creative control from Seed of Chucky onward. So Seed of Chucky, Curse of Chucky, Cult of Chucky, and the Chucky TV series is 100% his thing. Now, this is where the complicated side comes in, because as I said earlier when I was talking about Wes Craven, Freddy and Chucky are my two boys. Those are the two biggest building blocks of the foundation of my horror taste. Chucky and Freddy are so important to me that I can't even put it into words. I love those characters. I love those movies so much. They were so important to me as a kid. They continue to be so important to me as an adult. If I had to live in a world with no more Chucky and no more Freddy, I wouldn't want to live in that world. But I'd be lying if I didn't say that Don Mancini is very extreme hit or miss with me with what he has done since he has taken over complete creative control. Now, I have to give credit that he wrote the 4 films that I adore, Chucky 1 through Bride of Chucky, and he directed Curse of Chucky, which I genuinely love as well. I think that's the best thing that he has done since he has taken over. But Seed of Chucky, I very much do not like that film. It's grown on a lot of people. It has not grown on me, unfortunately. Cult of Chucky, there was things about it that I liked, but it was, again, just way too wacky and crazy and weird and campy for me. And the Chucky TV series has been pretty extreme hit or miss for me, too. I really enjoyed the first season, was pleasantly surprised by it. Really did not like season 2. To me, season 2 is the thing that I have liked the least about this entire franchise since Seed of Chucky. And it's because season 2 is basically Seed of Chucky 2.0. Third season is, right now, we're in the middle of it. It's distinctly better than season 2, I'll admit that, but there's also things about it that are still just kind of weird for me, like having ghosts. This is what I've noticed. Now, I'm not going to say this is a rule. This is just what my experience, what my observation has been in the horror community that I have interacted with, is that it seems like what Don has done, more distinctly with the TV series since he has taken over, is that there are a ton of people out there who were never really big Chucky fans. Like, they maybe liked the movies okay, or of course they were aware of him, but they were never really big fans of the property, that are now massive fans of what is going on with Chucky right now. Everybody that I see on Twitter, not saying everybody in the world, but everybody that I see on Twitter and other places that are like really loving Chucky, they always find a way to throw into their defense of it or of their commendation of it that something that lets me know they were never really a big fan of the franchise until recently. And on the flip side of that, most of the people that I interact with or that I have seen opinions given by that distinctly do not like modern Chucky are massive fans of the classic stuff. So I think that tends to be how it has worked out, is where if you like the more classic approach to Chucky, this very simple voodoo soul of a serial killer in a doll chasing a kid, trying to get out of the body of the first 3 films, and Bride of Chucky took it a little further, but still kind of the same plot. If you like the classic stuff, it's very hit or miss or very difficult for you to kind of adopt and accept how far Don Mancini has chosen to take things, how much he has expanded the lore and invented all these new rules and thrown out rules and just has a lot of crazy, wacky fun with the concept, and it just has no parameters on it. But the people that love that never really were all that attached in the first place, and they're not as stubborn, they're not as guarded about how Chucky is, supposed to be, as some of us classic crazy fans. So I don't know. Like I said, it's very difficult. I don't want to go on for too long. I could talk for a whole 2 hours on Chucky and Don Mancini, but there's people that love what he's doing. And, I love the fact that he has kept the franchise going. I love the fact and respect the fact that he has made Chucky his life. He could have gone on to do other things and said, yeah, I started with that Chucky thing, but now I'm going to move on to others. He's made Chucky his life, and he has kept it going through sequels and TV series. Has it all completely worked for me? No. Has some of it really not worked for me? Yeah. Do I kind of long for the glory days to a certain extent where Chucky was more to what I like? Yes, I do. But that's just a personal preference thing. But by all accounts, he seems like an awesome guy. Everybody that works with Don loves Don. Everybody that works with him basically has this attitude of like, whatever Don needs, I'm there forever and always. So I'm sure he's a wonderful dude. I wish that I would meet him at some point. But his style, his sense of humor, more specifically, his taste in where to take things just don't align with mine. I mean, that's as innocent as I can put it. Now we have Neil Marshall, and this is the guy that gave us The Descent as well as Dog Soldiers. He's done a few other things like Doomsday, and he's another one that I'm going to stick in I Want to Love You, because I really do like The Descent. I think that movie's awesome. I do not like Dog Soldiers. As many people have tried to tell me how awesome that movie is, I've watched it 3 times, and I don't get it. I don't get it whatsoever. And his other films, I haven't seen all of them, but there's certainly nothing that has prominence like those two films. So I don't know. There's a chance that maybe he was just kind of like a lightning in a bottle director with The Descent, or maybe he just hasn't been given the right funding or the right project to kind of come back and give us something that was awesome on the level of The Descent. But that's what I'll always remember him for, and it's just not enough to be higher on the list, unfortunately. Now we have Steve Miner, and this is another name that I'm going to stick in Dark Horse. He's probably most well-known for Friday the 13th Part 2 and 3, which are movies that I'm fine on. You know, the whole Friday the 13th franchise is not really something that I'm all that passionate about, honestly. There's some good ones. There's a couple of great ones, but Steve Miner, for me, I cherish more for House and Lake Placid. Those two movies were big movies when I was growing up, especially House. House is one that I hold very close to the chest because it seems like not too many people out there really know that film or cherish it the way that I do, except for my buddy Ken Sledge. He'll carry the torch for me if I ever let it snuff out. But Steve Miner is one of those guys that I never hear his name. You know, he's not quite on the level of Don Coscarelli or Holland as far as delivering many things that have shaped my taste, but I still think he belongs in the Dark Horse category because he gave us two of the better Friday the 13th sequels for my money, but House more specifically and Lake Placid I think are all-time classics that I love, so I wish he would have done some more. Now we have Andy Muschietti, and this is the guy that gave us the two recent It films. He also did a film called Mama. He has since kind of moved away from horror. He did The Flash last year, and he's supposed to be doing The Brave and the Bold, the Bat Family movie for James Gunn's newly rebooted universe. So we'll see. He might be one of those directors that kind of moves away from horror. Maybe he will never come back. But he's another one that I am going to stick in I Want to Love You. I really like the first It film. I do not like It Chapter 2 whatsoever. And we can, talk about his things beyond horror. I mean, well, Mama, I'm lukewarm on Mama. I know it's a more low-budget film. A lot of people talk that movie up. I finally saw it and thought it was just okay. But even The Flash I thought was really good, but there was some very distinct issues with it. The issue with Andy Muschietti is that when you say his name, I think horror director, but I also think horrendous CGI. And horrendous overuse of CGI. And I hate the fact that that is such a distinct piece of his style so far. And I don't know why. I don't know if he just likes it. I don't know if it's just a budgetary constraint or what. Maybe it's just a weird series of events. But every single one of his films has that same main issue for me, which is too much CGI and god-awful CGI. Even the first It, which I like a lot. There's a number of CGI scenes in that movie that I think look terrible. It Chapter 2, even more so. The Mama creature design, I never really cared all that much for. And then you get into The Flash, and The Flash is like one of the worst examples of modern CGI ever. And the fact that he came out and tried to defend it by saying, yeah, I intended it to look shitty, that kind of pissed me off, to be honest with you. I don't like when people talk to their audience like they're stupid. So I just got to be honest. He's somebody that I want to love because I know he's a talented filmmaker and I know that he has done some good things and will continue to do some good things. But when his name gets attached to something, the first thought that I have is like, oh God, is he going to CGI the fuck out of this? Like when they said he's going to do The Brave and the Bold, I was like, oh, well, The Flash was good. That's cool. Oh, wait. Are you going to CGI the fuck out of my Batman? Because no, don't you dare do that, Andy. Yeah, he very easily could come out of that list. I just hope that he reins in the CGI use. I don't know if it's the company he decides to use or what, but hopefully after The Flash, he got the message. Now we have Jordan Peele, and this is another one. I don't know, this might be controversial. It might not be. I'm sticking him, and you have my curiosity. Jordan Peele is on a very similar path to Ari Aster, although not nearly as steep of a drop, obviously. I thought that Get Out was fantastic. I still think that is very easily his best film. Us had a lot of things that I liked about it, but there were some major issues with the logic of that film and his balance of the surface level storyline with the metaphors and the symbolism that he was going for. And Nope had the same issue as Us, just not as much of an issue. I think that Jordan Peele is such an interesting filmmaker. I think that the concepts that he goes for 3 films in so far are fascinating. I think that visually he's a very strong director, and he does have a very distinct style already, which is commendable. My issue with him, with his second and third film mostly, I think Get Out actually balanced it really well, is that it seems, I hate to phrase it this way, but it's like, it seems like his storytelling is not as smart as he thinks that it is. I think he kind of steps on his own dick a little bit when it comes to his symbolism and his multi-layered storytelling, where there's always something going on that's very surface level, like Us, the home invasion, or Nope, the alien invasion. And then there's also something that by the third act is revealed in the twist to be like this commentary or this metaphor or this symbolism that is woven into the story. With Us, it was, you know, the underground society and his commentary on the duality of twins and all these other things. And you have rabbits in there and so much other, like there's so many different layers of symbolism in that movie. And with Nope, it was about like fame and, you know, don't look at the alien, like don't look at the camera. And you know, there's so many, again, multi-layered things woven into the story. And 2 films in, while Nope not being nearly as egregious as Us, I just feel like they start to conflict with each other after a while. Like he just goes so bold and so hard with what he's trying to sneakily say that it starts to unravel the baseline storyline. Hopefully that makes sense what I'm talking about. I know I'm kind of using a lot of big words, but I feel like he needs to simplify things a little bit. Like I'm all for going bold and going big. I would rather have a filmmaker reach for the stars and not reach them than somebody that never really has the ambition to try. But I just worry that the more that he goes on, it's almost like he buys into his own hype a little bit and just tries to make things way too multi-layered and smart when that's not necessarily the best approach. So I'm looking forward to what he's doing next. He is a name that's going to get me into the theaters. I'm always a little guarded now. Like, is this going to be one of those movies like Us? I don't know. We'll see. Now we have Sam Raimi. And this is another one that is going up into horror heroes. And he kind of has the whole thing with Brian De Palma where the movies that I love the most by Sam Raimi are not horror. It's his Spider-Man films. But you have Evil Dead, of course. The first 3 Evil Dead films are him. You have Drag Me to Hell. You have some others in there that are horror adjacent throughout his career. And even when you have things like Multiverse of Madness, the best parts of that movie is when the horror Evil Dead Sam Raimi comes out. I think he's one of the most distinct and celebrated voices in horror of the last 40 years. He's a name that absolutely gets me excited. Like if he was announced to be in a director of a new horror film today, that would instantly make my most anticipated of whatever year it came out without even knowing what it's about. I really enjoy the first Evil Dead and Army of Darkness. I'm one of those weird people that while I like it, Evil Dead 2 is my least favorite of the franchise, but it's still a really good time to watch. Drag Me to Hell is awesome. So yeah, Sam Raimi is one of those names that he's done a lot of really great things outside of horror. He's got a pretty varied filmography, and it's fairly solid too. There's not too many movies on that list that I don't think are very good. But yeah, he's one of the more he's been one of the more impactful names in horror that I just really distinctly like his style and his films. Now we have Robert Rodriguez, and even though he's much more of a well-known name, I would say, than some of the people I'm going to stick him next to, I'm going to stick him in Dark Horse because I think that most people don't really think of him as a horror director. They don't really value him for his work in horror, where when you say Robert Rodriguez to me, I don't think of Desperado and Spy Kids. I think of The Faculty and From Dusk Till Dawn and Grindhouse. So From Dusk Till Dawn and The Faculty specifically are 2 of my favorite films of all time. And I think that they're such distinct styles of horror, and he injects so much fun into his movies while never really pulling back on the intensity and pulling back on the horror side of things. And you know, his whole filmography is a little spotty. Like he's very extreme hit or miss, and it's almost like in a weird way. Like last year we had whatever the hell that movie was with Ben Affleck that was like in my bottom 10. That was like shockingly bad for the concept and the people that were attached to it. But Robert Rodriguez is one of those names that it just very much shaped my horror taste growing up with things like From Dusk Till Dawn, and then as I got a little older, things like The Faculty, which is still a movie that I value more than a lot of the films of that era. Like The Faculty came out in the post-Scream world, where I Know What You Did Last Summer and Urban Legend and everything were kind of the big new names in the block. I'll take The Faculty before any of those films. I know that puts me on an island, but that's how much I love it. So Robert Rodriguez, well-known guy, but I'd never really see his name get brought up as far as like really distinct horror directors or celebrated horror directors. And I wish he would do more because I think he's awesome at it. Now we have George Romero, and here's another one that's probably going to get me in trouble, but I'm putting him in I Want to Love You. Now, admittedly, there's a number of films that he's made that I have not seen, but I've seen pretty much all of his zombie films, like all of the Dead movies, the ones that he's most well known for. And maybe it's just a matter of not being there. I've seen it too late in life or whatever, but I really like Dawn of the Dead. And Day of the Dead I like quite a bit, more so for its gore than anything else, but I'm not as enamored with the George Romero style as most people seem to be. Very distinctly, he's very high on, gore and social commentary. Night of the Living Dead, one of the more influential films of all time. By the time I saw it, I had already experienced a multitude of the movies it influenced, so it didn't really do much for me by the time I saw the beginning of the zombie genre. But Dawn of the Dead, I had to watch it twice to really click with it, but I do like that one quite a bit. That is my favorite of his films. And Day of the Dead, I have my issues with it. I think that it's a little too campy and a little too loud for me, but I love the gore in that movie. I think that's one of the best examples of practical effects ever. So that's just me being honest. George Romero, I know he's a massive, massive fucking name, but I haven't seen enough of his films that have done a whole lot for my own personal taste. So I want to love him, just don't yet. Now we have Eli Roth, and Eli Roth is somebody that absolutely always has my attention. I haven't loved any of his movies, but I've really liked most of them. Cabin Fever I have a lot of fun with. I enjoy the first two Hostel films. Well, I don't know if enjoy is the right name, but I value the two Hostel movies. Thanksgiving was fun. A number of other things that he's done. I even have like some so bad that it's good enjoyment out of things like Knock Knock. I almost said Knocked Up. But what I like about Eli Roth is that he's a very consistent director. And my favorite thing that he's done is not even a horror film. It's his Death Wish remake, which most people don't like, and you're wrong. Just kidding. Just kidding about kidding. Eli Roth is somebody where, very much like Rob Zombie, who we'll talk about at the end of this list, I feel like his strengths of a filmmaker, as a filmmaker, I should say, are very consistent, and his worst tendencies as a filmmaker are very consistent, at least for my personal taste. The thing that he tends to drop the ball on for my own taste is the writing of his characters. Pretty much every single one of his films, I don't really care for the characters. They're usually written to be douchebags. They're somewhat unlikable. I don't really care about them. I don't really get invested in them so much. But his strengths as a filmmaker is that he has a very visceral style. He's good at building tension. He has a very fun balance with his stuff. Even the more horrifying stuff like Hostel, the first acts of those films are pretty distinctly fun. You get things like Thanksgiving. That's probably the most balance that he's had between horror and fun, where he's having a good time even in the more grotesque stuff going on. So I think I really enjoy his style overall. There's things that I wish he would improve on. There's things that don't necessarily work for me. But he's a name that as soon as it's attached to something, you might as well just go ahead and buy my ticket because I'm going to go check it out. So I like Eli Roth quite a bit. Now we have M. Night Shyamalan. And while he has got the most fucked consistency of anybody on this list, I'm sticking him in You Have My Attention because M. Night Shyamalan is one of those names where I have to see his newest film, for better or worse. And I never know what the fuck I'm going to get. I never know if I'm going to get an instant classic. I never know if I'm going to get a movie that's just going to be one of the more interesting movies of the year. I never know if I'm going to walk into an absolute shit show. And I have experienced the whole spectrum with Shyamalan's films. But it doesn't matter what the hell he's doing. If he is the name on the trailer or the poster, I'm there day one. You know, he has had some very bad films like The Last Airbender and After Earth and Lady in the Water. He has given us some of the best of all time, like Sixth Sense and Unbreakable and Signs. He's given some really good movies over the last number of years that were surprises, like Split, and I'm one of those people that really like Glass. There's a lot of things in the middle. I mean, his new film that he's advertising right now, Trap, totally has me sold. So for whatever reason, he always gets me. It's just like the fucking Godfather 3. It's like, just when I thought I was out, you fucking pull me back in with Josh Hartnett, you son of a bitch. So yeah, for better or worse, he's got a wild inconsistency. He is extreme hit or miss, but I have to see his work. Now we have the guys at Radio Silence, and there are a number of people. I think there's 3 people in Radio Silence, but it's mostly just the 2 directors that I see, where you have Matt, who is the guy on the left of this picture, and then you have Tyler Gillette, who is the guy on the right of this picture, and they were the 2 that I interviewed very briefly before we saw Abigail. There's a couple other people here that are listed under Radio Silence, but I really only see these 2 as kind of the poster childs of it. But these are guys that absolutely have my attention. I really enjoy Ready or Not. I really enjoyed Scream 5. I had my issues with the third act of Scream 6, but still overall, I dug what they were doing with that movie more than I didn't. And I fucking loved Abigail. Abigail was like instantly one of my favorite vampire films of all time. And I've since seen it again with my dad, and he loved it, and I loved it even more the second time. So these are guys where I just really like their style. I like their overuse of blood. I like their balance of horror and humor very much. And if they continue to make movies the way that they have made so far with these 4 that I have seen, they're very much doing things that are my type of film, that are my style. So I love what these guys do. Can't wait to see what they do next. And supposedly, since 2022, they've been attached to do Escape from New York. Haven't heard shit about it since, but I'd be very curious to see their style on Escape from New York. Now we have Tommy Lee Wallace, and a lot of people who are watching this video are going, who the fuck is that guy? And that is exactly why he belongs in the Dark Horse category. This is the guy that gave us the It 1990 miniseries. This is the guy that gave us Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, and this is the guy that gave us Fright Night Part 2. And all 3 of those films I really enjoy. It 1990 certainly has its issues, and a lot of it has dated and aged very poorly, but that was one of the most important horror things for me growing up. That was the first thing that actually gave me nightmares. Tim Curry as Pennywise. And there's a lot of things about that movie that I still love, predominantly in the first half, but even though it's aged poorly and some of the things in the second act were never very good in the first place, there is this odd charm about it that it's always one of my favorites to revisit. Halloween 3, I've always been a big defender of that one. And then Fright Night Part 2, I'm kind of late to the party on, but that is a really underappreciated sequel that I think he brings a lot of style to. So he's one of those names where, just like Tom Holland, you look at the things that he did, and if all of them work for you, which they absolutely work for me, you're just like, why the fuck didn't this guy do more work? Why didn't he do more movies? If I'm not mistaken, I think he did the sequel to John Carpenter's Vampires, the one with John Bon Jovi. I have not seen that movie, and I think that there's probably a reason why I haven't seen it, so I can't comment on that, but he's one of those names where you never see it brought up. You never see it brought up, and I'm always like, where the fuck is Tommy Lee Wallace? Because he is awesome. Now we have James Wan. And James Wan, I think, also has to go up into my horror heroes because there is not a single James Wan movie that I do not like. Aquaman 2 probably being the one that comes closest to me not liking it, but I think that's more so just my fatigue with the genre more than the issues with that film itself. But this is the guy that, he's up in the conversation with Wes Craven, where he's just impacted pop culture so much, where he gave us Saw, he gave us Insidious, and he gave us The Conjuring, like 3 major horror franchises that are still going today. Some stronger than others, but very much a huge horror voice over the last 20 years or so. I really like Dead Silence. I think that's a pretty underrated movie. My favorite of his is Death Sentence, very similar to Eli Roth. His action revenge film is my favorite. And I think he's done good stuff outside of this. Like Aquaman was a lot of fun. Furious 7 was a lot of fun. Malignant, I just kind of liked it when I first saw it, and then I loved it the more that I rewatched it. So James Wan is one of those voices where, or one of those names rather, where when he's attached to something, I know I'm going to like it. I might love it, but I know I'm going to like it. So he's up there in my horror heroes too. Now we have Ti West. And this one was also a little complicated for me, but I'm going to throw him, in You Have My Attention just because of recency bias. If I'm being honest, I've seen a number of his films before X, and they haven't really done much for me. I didn't think that The House of the Devil was very good. It was very slow. And The Innkeepers, while I think it has an all-time great scare, was also a very slow movie. But I adore X. I really enjoyed Pearl, and Maxine is my most anticipated film of the year, and based off the trailer, I'm pretty sure it's going to end up in my favorites of the year. So based purely off of his X trilogy, which is what he's currently known for, he's somebody that absolutely has my attention, to where Maxine is one thing, but if he is attached to anything after this little X trilogy, instantly, that's going to be like one of my most anticipated things of the year. So nice little comeback here very recently with Ti West with this out of nowhere trilogy that none of us expected. Now we have Leigh Whannell, the heir apparent to the James Wan legacy. You know, James Wan and Leigh Whannell were very much tied to each other for most of James Wan's early career, especially. They co-wrote Saw. They co-wrote a number of other films like Insidious. And then Leigh Whannell finally broke out and started directing his own films with Insidious Chapter 3. And foolish old me was so skeptical because all I really attached Leigh Whannell to was his not so great performance in the first Saw film. And so I really, for whatever reason, was very skeptical. And I saw Insidious Chapter 3, and to date, that's still my favorite Insidious film. I thought that was a great directorial debut. He followed it up with Upgrade, which I thought was fucking awesome. And then he followed that up with The Invisible Man, which I also thought was fucking awesome. So Leigh Whannell, really the only thing that keeps him out of horror heroes is that he's only done 3 films so far. We've got The Wolfman coming, which I would bet testicles that movie is going to be awesome. I mean, I cannot wait to see what he does with that. And I think when all is said and done, by the time we're done with these two men's filmography, I think there's a solid chance that I actually might prefer Leigh Whannell's run more than James Wan's run. But I can't give credit for things that I assume. So Leigh Whannell is going very high up into the You Have My Attention category. He's a guy that I thought would have been perfect to do Escape from New York, as I said that Radio Silence is supposedly currently attached to, but I love his work as a director. He's done outstanding things as a writer, and so I'm just very, very excited to see what he does next, and I've enjoyed everything he's done so far. Now we have Adam Wingard, which is another kind of complicated one. I would stick him in You Have My Curiosity. You know, he's the guy that gave us You're Next. He also gave us the Blair Witch movie, the third one, the reboot or whatever, or sequel. He did The Guest, which is more of a thriller, but has, you know, a bit of a horror style to it, a horror aesthetic. More recently, he's been attached to the Godzilla vs. Kong things, which really aren't my thing. But Adam Wingard, when he does horror, I do like his style. Even though Blair Witch isn't really my thing, I liked his approach to Blair Witch. You're Next, I think, is his best movie. I really enjoyed that one. I like the style and the Guest. So even though I know he's laughing all the way to the bank and having a really good time financially doing these Godzilla vs. Kong films, that I would say most people are saying are among the more enjoyable films in that little franchise right now. I look forward to him getting away from that and going back to horror stuff. So he's somebody who has my curiosity, but he's done a number of things that I'm just like, it's not really my thing, dude. Edgar Wright, huge fan favorite that also is going to go into You Have My Curiosity. Edgar Wright gave us the Cornetto trilogy, which is Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and At World's End. The World's End. I might be fucking that title up. He also gave us Scott Pilgrim. He gave us Baby Driver, which is by far my favorite film he's ever done, and then recently with Last Night in Soho. So 4 of his films are pretty much horror, more so horror comedy. But he's one where a lot of people love him. A lot of people really distinctly like his humor and his style, and I just have kind of a love-hate relationship with British humor. So Shaun of the Dead, a movie that is absolutely a fan favorite that I've never heard anybody say they don't like, is a film that I've watched 3 times now and have struggled to really get into it. I don't dislike it. I just don't love it on the way that everybody else does. Hot Fuzz I thought was pretty damn good. That's probably my other favorite of his. And World's End was okay. Last Night in Soho, I liked the style of it a lot. I just didn't think that the story was all that good. It was a little more style than substance. So he's somebody that I've had a bit of a murky relationship with, but I like his distinct style and I like his approach to certain things, and especially with Baby Driver sold me quite a bit. Without Baby Driver, he might be in I Want to Love You. But he's a name that I'm interested. If he's attached, I'm interested. I don't know if I'll like it, but I'm curious. And finally, bringing it all home with Mr. Rob Zombie, who I ironically share a birthday with, January 12th. Rob Zombie, man, he is possibly the most controversial of any of the names up here. And I'm going to stick him in I Want to Love You because I really do. He is one of those directors, just like with Eli Roth, where I feel like the things that he does well, he always consistently does well. He's got a really interesting visual style. I like how he brings kind of this 70s exploitation flavor into most things that he does. I like the music that he brings into his movies. You know, he has a bit of a music video director strength to his films, although he's developed out his skills as a storyteller more than most music video directors. But his problem is always the writing. It's always his characters. It's always his dialogue more than anything else. And that's just something where it seems like if you don't like that, then you just don't like Rob Zombie movies, because that's always going to be a part of the DNA. And that's the frustration. I feel like if we ever got a movie that somebody else wrote that Rob Zombie directed, there's a chance that he could deliver an all-time great horror film. And some people would say he already did. A lot of people seem to really like The Devil's Rejects. I like aspects of it. It's not a favorite of mine whatsoever. But he's somebody that I always root for. Like every time I watch one of his films, I'm like, come on, this is the time, Rob. This is the time. This is the one. And by the end of it, I always say, fuck, maybe it's the next one. I don't know. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know how many more movies he's going to make, because he's had a very bad track record here lately. After he did the Halloween films, he's had to like crowdfund his movies, like 31 and 3 from Hell, and then he got the chance to do The Munsters, which I was very excited for, and that really did not work for most people. So I don't know. I don't know how many more Rob Zombie films we're going to get, or what they're going to look like, or if they're going to be any different than the films that he's made so far. But he's somebody that I really wish I loved his stuff. There's aspects to every single one of his movies that I love something there, but I just don't get quite enough of what I love. So this is where he's going to stay. All right, guys. Well, that's the end of this one. This is the completed tier list right here in front of you. This one was fun. This one was interesting, and I'm curious to see what you guys do too. So be sure to check out that link in the video description and fill out your own tier list and tag me in social media to show where you place all of these horror directors. Huge thank you to my patrons for this awesome idea. And also, if you want to check out how to join in on the fun for these Patreon picks, check out that link in the video description as well. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed that, please click over here for all my 2024 new release reviews so far. I'm also going to put a playlist up here of my other tier list rankings. I've done quite a few different ones. Please like, share, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss everything in the future. And as always, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.